Hey everyone, how's it going out there? This is Fina, the Waifu Satyr, bringing you guys another Crusader build guide, this time featuring the Akkhan's Condemn build aimed at T16 content. A little bit of information about this build. The basic build has been around for about 4 seasons. It's been dominant seasons 12 through 15 for pretty much everything, right? G-Rifts, uh, bounties, regular rifts, and whatever else you can imagine. However, today, considering how old it is and it needing some updates, there are definitely stronger options for GRIFs, right? So unless you have 8,000 Paragon or so, uh, doing GRIF 110s at a reasonable time is going to be out of your reach. So for most of us, we're going to be sticking to rifts and bounties, okay? And for some context, it's season 21, and I hope you guys have been saving your gear because for PTR, this next upcoming PTR 2.7, there's a chance that this set will receive a damage update. So we don't know what exactly Blizzard is doing, but it would be in your best interest, if you haven't already done so, to start saving your gear for this build because you don't want to be caught with your pants down when this will be the next big thing, potentially at least. So with that out of the way, let's just get right into the build, starting with the gear. So of course, I'm going to go over the standard setup that I use and recommend before going into other variant options. Okay, I'll just cover those later, but let's just get the basics out of the way. So starting with a con set, you'll need 5 pieces, and the set bonuses, I'll just kind of quickly go over them. The 2-piece set gives you resource cost reduction. The 4-piece set gives you cooldown reduction, and the 6-piece set gives you damage and damage reduction. Okay, so you want, let's say, the amulet, chest, shoulder, glove, and either the pant or boot. The next set you'll want is the Captain Crimson set. You guys are already familiar with this, but I'll just quickly go over it. The 2-piece set bonus gives you CDR and RCR, and the 3 set bonus, of course, gives you damage and damage reduction based on the respective. The next set that you're going to need is, of course, the Bastions of Will set. This is the focus and restraint rings, and these are going to give you a huge damage boost. Okay, so you guys are probably already familiar with that. I'm not going to belabor it. Moving on from the sets, you'll either need the Leoric's crown equipped or the illusory boot. It's up to you which one you want to equip. Whichever of the two is better. Moving on, I recommend the Nemesis bracers for progression. Of course, you'll need the Freighter's Wrath shield. This is a Crusader shield. And the Furnace equipped or the Blade of the Prophecy equipped. So either of these two, whichever is the better, I would just equip. Just know that it'll be a lot easier to get a decent furnace because of the huge range that is there for the Blade of Prophecy's legendary power. So that was pretty much it for the equipped gear. Okay, in terms of the cube, I already kind of went over the weapon slot and the armor slot. So you'll just need the Ring of Royal Grandeur to equip all your sets, right? Alternatively, for the armor slot in the cube, you don't actually need the Leoric's crown or the illusory boots. Just know that these are really nice to have. It's up to you if there's something that you really want, you know, I'll let you guys decide for yourselves, but this is just what I recommend, the Leoric's crown and illusory boots. Okay. So in terms of the skills are not too hard. So for the primary, you'll want pretty much anything. You have options here, a lot of options. It's up to you again which one you want in terms of the skills and the runes. What I recommend is Justice and the Hammer of Pursuit rune. So it looks like this. And what's nice about it, for me at least, is that it's, first of all, it's a ranged skill, and secondly, it auto attacks or it auto targets. So sometimes you fire, and let's say an enemy is behind you, it'll just home in on that enemy, right? So that's what's awesome, right? Because you don't really have to aim, So that's why I recommend this skill. But again, it's up to you. You might like something else, right? So this is just to proc your Bastion of Will set bonus, right? So it's not going to do any significant amount of damage, but you'll need it to boost your damage. Okay. Now, your main source damage is going to come from Condemn, and you have options here as well. So I recommend, of course, the Unleashed rune. Looks like this. And you can just, whenever you activate it, it just instantly explodes or activates. But if you have other runes equipped, just know that there is a ramp up time. So like so. And it's really up to you which rune you use, but of course I recommend this. Anyways, Condemn Vacuum is really nice if you want to use Strong Arm Bracers. It'll boost your damage. The Eternal Retaliation, it's pretty useless, so I don't even recommend using this. Just stick to Unleashed. The Shattering Explosion rune. This is really nice because it increases your range on Condemn. And so yeah, has a huge range. You could play at mid range. You don't have to play at melee range, right? And so you can just clip enemies at a distance. So that's nice. Of course, it's a physical rune, right? So you need physical damage. And you can go for the fire rune, the Reciprocate. And what I like about it is that it's really cool looking. All right. Other than that, it gives you an extra damage, but it's not really meaningful. But if you're running the LOD build, you'll definitely this is definitely a viable choice. But yeah, I like to run the Unleashed rune for Condemn. Another skill that you probably want is the Laws of Valor Unstoppable Force. So there are times where you're going to want to spam this skill, and if you don't want to deplete your Wrath Pool, activating this is nice. Also, it gives you resource cost reduction, right? And that equates to damage reduction. Okay. So let me just wait for my AC to expire. So with Paragon, I think Paragon and the Captain's set, I have about 28% RCR base. With the Accurate's Champion, it'll boost me up to 64%, and if I pop Laws of Valor Unstoppable Force, it'll even boost me up to 82%. So you can see how important this is for toughness, right? And so you don't really need the skill if you don't plan on spamming the Condemn skill, but it's just nice to have in those those moments where you kind of need it, right? Another skill that I recommend is Iron Skin, Steel Skin, and this will give you damage reduction for 7 seconds. And I mean, you can go for flash, but if you're using the illusory boots, you don't need it. So might as well get a rune that prolongs the duration on the skill, right? Looks like that. Looks pretty cool. Another skill that you will probably want is Steed Charge and Endurance. This is your mobility skill. It will allow you to be efficient at clearing rifts and doing bounties. So this will be up for quite a while. And for my, see, I'm at almost 67% cooldown reduction. This will just give me a half-second downtime with this rune equipped. So pretty nice to have. And of course, Akkurate's Champion Prophet gives me damage reduction, and a free cheat death. so don't leave home without it. So those were the skills. In terms of the passives, the one that you absolutely need is, of course, Heavenly Strength to equip your two-hander. Okay, everything else is optional. It's just nice to have. So the thing about Lord Commander is that it'll reduce the cooldown reduction on your steed charge, your horse. Okay, so like I said earlier, I have about a half a second of downtime on it. If I get rid of the skill, of course, it'll be like a second or more for the downtime. And so uh, it's just really nice to have when you want to get from point A to point B, right? Especially useful for bounties. And of course, holy cost is damage, gives you a little bit of sustain, and finery, of course, boosts your strength. So again, if you're playing hardcore, you'll probably want to give one of these up for the indestructible passive. Okay, I'll leave you to figure that on your own, whichever one you want to uh, give up. So those were the skills. In terms of Paragon, Paragon is very easy, of course, like any Crusader build. The offensive, defensive, and utility tabs you will want to max out. And the core tab, as for the core tab, max wrath can be useful, so you might want to put some points there. Movement speed, you guys already know how to allocate points for. As for vitality, this is important. Even with 1,000 vitality pumped into Paragon, I only have 560,000 life. So this build, if you're optimized, you won't have much life. And so you'll want to put in enough so that you can survive or feel comfortable at, right? And as for the rest, you want to pump into strength. So you'll notice that I have quite a bit of unspent points left over, and that's because currently I'm at 3277 Paragon, and I was just simulating Paragon 1500. So if you're playing season 21, and you've been playing kind of casually, you should be around 1500 Paragon or so, and so that's what I simulated. You can be more or less, of course. Everyone's different, and this season, for me personally, I haven't put too much time in, and so I'm at 1600 plus Paragon. So that's the reasoning behind that. In terms of the follower, so enough about Paragon. The follower is pretty basic. You'll want a follower when you're playing alone. One of the benefits is, of course, the S of Johann amulet. This will group enemies for you, so that's nice. Another benefit, of course, the Oculus Ring for more damage. And if for some reason you're using Unity for toughness, you'll need a follower, of course. Okay, so the rest of the gear is not too important except for the follower not being able to die. So just make sure you have this relic. And as for the skills, the one I would focus on mostly is the healing abilities and the Inspire skill. So this will give you some wrath per second, and that will be useful if you're spamming your abilities. Okay, so that was the follower. In terms of optimization, as a general rule, you'll want cooldown reduction pretty much everywhere you can get it. So again, I have 67%, and that's because it will boost your damage via the captain's set, right? And also because Akkhan's champion, it's on cooldown, right, for quite a while. You'll need all that you can get. So a bare minimum, maybe around 56%, if you're not optimized, is where you want to be. Having more, of course, is nice because, you may not be paying attention to your skill and you have downtime, right? Like right now, let's just say. And it's quite easy to die, right? So just having extra cooldown reduction will benefit you in terms of toughness as well. So yeah, again, cooldown reduction is something you want to prioritize. Another thing that you may not want to prioritize, but it's nice to have, is of course resource cost reduction. And I don't have any on my gear, but you know, it's really nice to have because if you have quite a bit, you stack quite a bit, you may not even need this skill, and so you can have a different law perhaps. So if you're going glassy, you can go for the laws of hope and the rune of your choice basically, but this will give you a shield when you activate the skill. And so the implication is, of course, you can use the Scorch necklace. Um, and so having resource cost reduction is going to be nice. And of course, you know, just like most builds out there, you'll want to maximize critical hit damage and critical hit chance. As for area damage, if you're pushing, it's important, but not so much when you're running T16 content. So as you can see, I don't really have area damage. Let's see, area damage. Yeah, I think I only have the base amount from Paragon, and you know that's enough, right? I'm not killing too much trash or large mobs when running T16, so that should be sufficient. See, okay, so all resist, you'll want to maximize all resist, of course. This is really nice, especially physical resist in conjunction with the esoteric. Okay, so one thing I forgot to mention are the the gems. I always forget this. Okay, so at minimum, you'll want the Bane of the Trapped and esoteric. Okay, you may not need esoteric if you have a lot of Paragon, but you'll want the Bane of the Trapped for added damage. And because you're going to be in melee range, for the most part, this will be practically always on. And I usually run with the Boon of the Hoarder for more gold. So I'm on non-seasons. I have 500 or 205 billion gold. I don't need more gold, but it's, you know, why not, right? Uh, yeah, in my case, it's a little overkill, but, you know, there's no downside to it, right? I don't need more damage for T16, and so Boon of the Hoarder is a nice choice. Of course, you can do something like Bane of the Powerful for more damage. If you want more movement speed, you can go with the Wreath of Lightning. And of course, if you want to go glassy and equip the Scorch Necklace, it'll be in your best interest to slot the Molten Wildebeest Gizzard in to your build. Okay, so those were the gems. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know how I forgot that, but anyways, back to optimization. Okay, yeah, you'll want legendary gems. That's how you optimize your gear, all right. Okay, and of course, you know, damage reduction via like the ranged and melee is, of course, nice to have. It's not really required. You'll want some life sustain, of course. You know, I don't have all that much, but every little bit counts. And I have a thing about pickup radius, right? If you've seen any of my videos, I always recommend that you have, you know, quite a bit. I have 9 here, but at minimum, I would recommend around 4 or so. Okay, so just do your best to, you know, maximize the stat, but you don't need to go too overboard, okay? Let's see, as for anything else, I think that's pretty much it for the basics. In terms of the individual gear, I'll start with the helmet slot. I recommend strength, vitality, and critical hit chance for the primaries. The secondary, you'll want a resist. I recommend physical resist. Wherever you can get it on any of your gear. Pickle radius is nice, of course. And for the Layork's crown that I'm using, I can only get 1 secondary. And so, you know, cold resist is not bad. Okay. In terms of the moving on, for the shoulder slot, you don't ideally want strength, but it's nice to have. However, I recommend all resist, cooldown reduction, and condemn damage at minimum. So instead of strength, you can have the primary of your choice. I recommend resource cost reduction, or you can just, like I said, stick to strength. Okay. Secondaries I kind of went over. For the glove slot, at minimum, you'll want main stat, double crit, and cooldown reduction. This is bare minimum. Again, you don't need strength. I have another example here where I have area damage, area damage. So this area damage was all the rage during seasons 12 through 15 for this build because, you know, people were running G-Rifts, but yeah, since if you don't have plans for running G-Rifts, area damage isn't really going to do much for you. So that was the glove. For the chest slot, you'll want condemn damage, of course, okay, and you want to prioritize damage reduction. So I have all resist on my as a primary. You can also go for something like damage reduction from elites. You can also slot in another, or at least on this, I could have gotten on top of melee damage reduction, ranged damage reduction in the secondary. So again, just prioritize toughness for the armor slot. Okay, so in terms of the amulet for the standard setup, you'll want holy skills damage, or whichever skill that you're using, right? For condemn, you want the element to correspond to your rune. So either holy, physical, or fire. So unfortunately, there's no lightning rune. But anyways, you'll want elemental damage and double crit along with socket. So that is pretty much standard. For the rings, you'll want double crit and cooldown reduction ideally. So you might not even need critical hit chance. So I have 61%. That is quite a lot compared to my critical hit damage. So in light of that, I can probably give up critical hit chance if I want to, right? So maybe damage range or something else of your choice, right? As you'll notice, I don't have ancients, and it's really hard. I haven't had much luck for these rings, so maybe one day I'll get ancients that are usable. For the bracer slot, you'll of course want element, strength. I recommend all resist and critical hit chance for the primaries. And the secondaries, or the secondary, you'll want a either pickup radius or a damage reduction modifier. That is what I recommend. For the belt, pants, and boots, these are standard fare. You should already know how to gear for or prioritize for. As for this darn thing, I hate this shield. I love it and hate it. Oh my goodness. This thing, if you look at the legendary power, the damage range, it varies from 600 to 800%. Oh, this is such a difficult item slot to gear for, guys. Okay. And not only that, you'll want in the primaries the critical hit chance, cooldown reduction, and condemn damage ideally at minimum. Well, actually, you just want whatever you can get that's usable, but those are the ideal, right? And of course, you could roll off strength for something else, right? Maybe even elite damage. But either way, you know, 3 of these ideal primary efficacies on top of getting near 800% damage for condemn is going to be pretty darn tough, okay? And that is why I still haven't found a good ancient one. As for the secondary, you'll want a damage reduction or toughness modifier, okay? Yeah, so good luck with that, guys. Get back to me if you guys find a good game primal. Let me know, and I'll be jealous for days. But that's okay. I'll give you a pat on the back. Okay, for the furnace or your weapon, I'm using the furnace, and for good reason, because it's easy to gear for compared to a good bladed prophecy. And I mean, I have both are primal, but for the longest time, you know, yeah, this thing, it's been a thorn in my side. So I've been using the furnace. So what's nice about the furnace is that it gives you more damage raw damage. So attack speed for this build is not really useful. However, the nice thing about equipping the Blade of Prophecy is that you can equip the item of your choice for the weapon slot in the cube. So if you don't need Furnace, you can just pretty much use whatever, right? Anyways, in terms of the ideal affixes, you'll want damage range, of course, 10% damage, cooldown reduction, and strength is optional. You can go for something else, right? So more elite damage, maybe resource cost reduction, whatever you guys prioritize, it's up to you. And for the secondary, of course, it doesn't really matter. So either way, it's going to be kind of hard to gear for. The furnace, I had to blow a lot of bounty mats to get, and this thing I just it was just dumb luck that it dropped in some random G rift. Anyways, so that is it for the equipped gear optimization. Okay, so I just went over the standard setup. Okay, so if you don't want to use a standard setup, you can do whatever you want, right? So for instance, if you don't want to optimize for holy damage, right, and you're using the SOJ in conjunction with the new legendary power, you can just use whatever element that is on it, right, as long as they're all the same on the ring, your amulet, and your bracer, right? So physical, 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 or holy, 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 fire, 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 lightning, lightning, lightning. As long as they're all the same, right? It doesn't matter if you're using the SOJ. And so in those situations, you can use something like the Heart Slaughter instead of the Furnace, right? So physical, 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 physical. That will give you a nice boost for damage against trash. I mean, you don't really need it, but it's just an option. Alternatively, let's say you have lightning gear, you can use a Shepherd's Hammer. Or, if you want fire gear, there's Maximus. Pairing it up with a Syndicate is really nice too. And so, yeah, you've got options, right? You'll just have to give something up for it. So if you want to use Cindercoat, you'll have to give up the Leoric's Crown, right? So really up to you, kind of play around. You don't even have to use some of these sets, right? So like the Focus, you can use the Endless Walk set, You can try to incorporate the Flavor of Time. So, there's a lot of options, right, depending on your needs. Anyways, in terms of some of the build variations that I recommend. So I just went over the standard setup using the Bastions of Will set, so F and R. Okay. You can also slot in the Endless Walk set like I mentioned. And fit in a ring of your choice. So do some experimentation, just kind of play around. I'll let you be Frankenstein's monster or Frankenstein, and you can create the monster. So yeah, your choices are quite varied. Okay. Alternatively, moving on from the standard setup, standard setups is the Glacier setups, and so you can, like I said earlier, you can equip the Squirt's Necklace, either equipped in the gear or via the cube, right? And like I said, you don't even have to use the Traveler's Pledge. You can use the Bastions of Will set. So if I wanted to replicate this, alternatively, I can use the Squirt's Necklace in the amulet slot, but I'll just have to cube. Let's see here. Yeah, something like that. Okay. Yeah, there you go. So this is an alternative to this glassy setup. Anyway, sorry about that lack of organization here, but that is also certainly an option. And of course, you can just go all out on your sets, right? And so implementing the all guilds search or all guilds authority set into this build is quite nice, especially for bounties, because let's say you're doing 4-man bounties, you're playing in group, and because of the low damage output of this build, you know, having extra damage from this set is really nice. So, you know, I'm not going to go into the set bonuses, but yeah, you'll get more damage and damage reduction as a result of using or incorporating an additional set. So this is a no frills setup. You'll just unfortunately have to give up the Nemesis bracers to use this. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention about the Glacier setup is that for the law, like I mentioned earlier, you probably want the Laws of Hope to give you an extra shield, right? And so, as nice as the Molten Woodbeast Gizzard legendary gem is, you know, it'll fall off, of course, because you're a melee build, or this is a melee build, and so having an extra shield is really nice when you're going glassy for the Squirt's necklace setup. So that was pretty much it for the variations in setup. In terms of playstyle, I'll just quickly touch on it. It's really simple. You just pop Akkhan's champion. You'll always want this up. It will always be up as long as you are optimized in terms of cooldown reduction and you're paying attention, right? So sometimes this will drop off when you're distracted. So just get in the habit of keeping an eye on this skill, right? And as for the Laws of Valor and Iron Skin, you just want to alternate between these when you need them, right? So oftentimes you won't really need these skills, but it's just nice to have, right? And so, you know, the law you'll want to pop when you want to spam condemn, right? And that way you'll keep your wrath pool quite high. So one thing to note about the condemn skill is that you don't want to spam the button for the skill. So this is what happens. Not ready yet. As you'll notice, the attacks don't come out as quickly as if you timed it correctly, and that's because of an internal cooldown for the skill. And so you'll want to get the hang of the timing, but when you do so, it comes out at that kind of a pace, right? And so just something to keep in mind. So just don't spam your button, right? Okay, so that's pretty much it. I have a video I can show you to demonstrate how to play this build. I don't think I did a very good explanation on the playstyle, so let's just load this up for you. So for some context, again, I simulated 1500 Paragon, and this is just a T16 Rift using the standard setup that I just showed you. Yep, so there's my unspent Paragon points. I don't have much strength. Alright, so activate Akkhan's champion, pop your mobility skill, and get to an elite as quickly as you can. I usually just kill elites. I don't focus too much on trash because they don't give much progression. Okay. And again, this build is quite tanky, but if you're not unoptimized, you'll definitely want to liberally use your defensive skills. So as you can tell, my build is optimized, and so elites are going to go down pretty fast. Okay. It might take a few condemns if you're not too optimized. Okay. And of course, when you're playing in groups, It takes quite a bit of condemns to kill enemies. Also, one thing I want to mention is that I usually pick things up, but because my inventory was full, uh, for the purposes of making this video, I didn't really pick up too much stuff. Okay, so right there, it was an example of clipping enemies from a distance, so you may want to do that when they're kind of dispersed. So again, this is a mobile build. It's one of the reasons why it's so efficient at T16 content. So one thing about Crusaders is that sometimes you get stuck on these darn doors. And so if you come across these floors with a lot of doors, yeah, that can be a kind of a pain. It messes up your flow and yeah, it's just annoying. Okay, so this is about it right here. Make quick work of the RG. Alright, so that was it. Yeah, nothing too fancy, guys. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this build guide. I hope this was, useful to somebody out there. And PTR 2.7 is coming up, folks. Start saving your gear. Alright, this was Fina, the waifu satyr. Thanks for watching, guys. I will see you next time. Have the best day ever. Thanks for watching.